everyone, I'm Kyle Dyer, and welcome to Colorado Inside Out on this Friday, July the 5th. We hope everyone is having a wonderful time celebrating our country's independence. We are offering a break from cookout conversation for some insider conversation. Let me get right to introducing you to this week's insider panel. Welcome to Patty Calhoun, founder and editor of Westward. Krista Kafer, columnist with the Denver Post. Alton Dillard, media consultant with the Dillard Group, political analyst for 9 News, and former election spokesperson for the city and county of Denver. And we also have Alvina Vasquez, an advocacy leader in Denver and member of the PBS 12 Community Advisory Board. This week, as Americans reflect on the 1776 signing of the Declaration of Independence, we are reminded about a specific set of rights that we have as Americans: the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Let's start with liberty. One definition I found says liberty is freedom from restraint upon an individual. This week, the U.S. Supreme Court announced former presidents of the United States should be free from prosecution, the term being absolute immunity from prosecution for official acts they make while in the role of president. Aside from that, there was also lots of conversation this week about last week's debate, Patty. So let's just start talking about what we have in front of us.
If you don't think people will be talking about this during their cookouts, I'll be very surprised. I almost fell asleep when you started talking because I've traveled so far to get to this show today, like Biden had traveled so far internationally and has blamed his really horrible debate performance on that international travel. The damage control this week has been horrifying. Trump has had an unbelievably great week between the response to the debate, which he didn't do a particularly good job on, but he did a Trumpian job on, and that compared to Biden, that was okay. But the Supreme Court decision is he gets to postpone sentencing from July until September for his last conviction. The only thing he can't do is now talk about Biden as being from a crime family, because if Trump isn't responsible, if he's got immunity from his acts in office, so does Biden. So at least we're not going to hear that anymore. But this is shaping up to be such a long and depressing season.
Mm-hmm. Krista, I'm glad you were here today because I'm curious. You sat in another Supreme Court hearing. You were tied to the other Trump lawsuit. And so he's 2 for 2. What did you think about when you heard all this go down on Monday?
Yeah, and I'm 0 for 2, right?
You're 0 for 2.
So, I get immunity is an important thing, right? So we protect this office and other government officials so that they aren't, they don't have a lawsuit sort of, as a dark cloud over decisions, because some decisions don't go well. I think about Afghanistan and the debacle there, or Benghazi, or the Iraq War. Presidents have to make serious decisions, and sometimes those decisions don't go well. Immunity is important. Here's where I have a question, though. Is, working behind the scenes to overturn an election and foment violence, are those official acts? I think the former president should be glad that he paid off his porn star lover and covered that up before he took office. So at least he's not immune from those things. Where I'm disappointed in the court is that those aren't official actions. Those are unofficial actions. Those are selfish actions. Those are actions of a lawless individual under the cover of an office to undermine an election to keep himself in power. I also think it's important for voters to consider that with immunity, and with the sort of enhanced immunity now that the court has ruled, is it is our responsibility to elect moral, ethical individuals into that position. And neither of the individuals that we are looking at right now fit that description.
Alton.
All right, well, piggybacking off of Krista, there essentially are no checks and balances anymore. Because remember, that's how our government was supposed to be set up. The executive, the judicial, et cetera, these branches are supposed to be a check on each other. That's gone. And so as I always like to tell people, elections have consequences, and may her memory be a blessing, but so does dying on the bench. And so look at the gerontocracy that we have as our country right now. When you've got someone like Chuck Schumer, who's the baby of the bunch at like 73, 74 years old. Both sides need to do better about building a bench. So a couple of the questions going back to the debate thing and also the Supreme Court decision, does this finally activate the other side? Are people going to be able to sustain the current outrage? And then also from the communication standpoint, the fact that we're still discussing debate damage control to me is fascinating. One of the first things I tell my clients is you have to address it early on, or next thing you know, it was a 1 or 2 day story becomes a 5-6 day story. And I understand there's a different scale when you're talking about essentially the leader of the free world in that discussion, but just the fact that more and more people are piling on. Now members of the Democratic Party in both chambers of Congress are starting to say the quiet part out loud. So to Patty's point, it's going to be an interesting, and I would also agree, depressing next few months.
Alvina.
I guess what I would add is that the justice system was always meant to benefit wealthy, influential people. I think American people right now are experiencing what Black and brown people have experienced with our justice system for generations. When it comes to the Democrats versus Republicans, I'm glad Democrats are questioning it. I think they should. I think that's what makes them a dynamic, great party to be a part of. What's different with the Republican Party is they continue to support Donald Trump. We saw that does not work in Colorado. They had a huge loss on primary night. We have to get away from supporting people that are malicious, that want to undo our democracy. They are gaslighting Americans. They have been since the Reagan era, talking about trickle-down economics. Now we're talking about, homelessness. All these issues are like trickling down to the worst possible situation that this country needs. So when we talk about the differences of the Democratic and the Republican Party, that's the way that I'm looking at it.
And it is interesting that this week Adam Frisch did come out and say Biden has to go and we need another candidate in the Democratic Party. So we'll see what other Colorado Democrats follow suit, if they do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, also here in Colorado, there are almost 24 laws. I don't know the exact number, I keep seeing different numbers, but there are a lot of new laws that we all have to be aware of. They all took effect on Monday, July the 1st. People look at laws as ways to either promote or suppress our freedoms. And Krista, one of the new laws states you can no longer carry firearms in sensitive places, like the Capitol building or on schools, campuses. But there are some areas of Colorado where people are like, no, we're opting out of that. We want to be able to carry our guns where we want to.
Well, let's keep in mind that people who have a concealed carry permit are the ones that are the least likely to commit crimes. These people have gone through a vetting process, they have training, and so this law seems to be pointed at them, even though they're not the ones that are committing the crimes. We end up, and also by sort of designating these sensitive spots, some of them I think are appropriate. If you go into a courthouse, there is a metal detector, everyone is disarmed. There's armed security that is going to keep the safety for those that are in that building. But in a public park, anyone who is lawless, who is a criminal who wants to bring a weapon is going to bring a weapon. And yet the law-abiding people who want to preserve their own safety and those around them, if they bring a weapon, they've run afoul of the law. Where I have concerns, though, is for somebody whose life may be in danger, who's got a concealed carry permit, who's been through that process, preventing them from protecting themselves as they need. Maybe a woman who has somebody who's abused her and is afraid of this individual, and she's on a university campus. Shouldn't she be able to lawfully carry a concealed weapon? I would say yes. So as far as opting out, if my life was in danger, I think I would personally opt out of that law and carry a weapon to protect myself. If I got caught, I'd let the chips fall where they may. It's better to be alive and be in front of a jury than not alive.
Yeah, there's a saying to that. It's called, you'd rather be judged by 12 than carried by 6. So the thing about this particular, especially the sensitive spaces part of it, is we have to take that Denver hat off in this, because look at some of the counties that are opting out. And the thing is, this is the American West, the rootin' tootin' shootin' American West, and people are always going to have that relationship with their guns. There's an old rap lyric that comes to mind that goes like this. It's the wild, wild west that I'm talking about, where Clint Eastwood would get socked in the mouth. That's the kind of Colorado that we live in. And so Understanding, again, to your point about being able to self-protect, but also the fact that these counties are opting out, and they're not all rural counties. A couple of the counties, adjacent to the metro area have decided to opt out of this. And the other couple of laws that I was looking at also, of course, with the elections hat on, is the one about deep fakes and electors. The one on the deep fakes is particularly fascinating to me because I've always sort of jokingly said that if you base your vote on, campaign videos, bumper stickers, yard signs, you probably don't need to be voting in the first place. But that's what I'm keeping a very close eye on. And then also, as our state continues to spiral towards housing unaffordability, now that they've lifted the caps on residential occupancy, I want to see what kind of effect that has.
Alvina?
Unfortunately, Colorado has been at the center of a lot of mass casualty events. And I feel that Coloradans are traumatized by that, and they're trying to find security. I don't feel safe going to a movie theater. I still look around. Same thing at the mall, at the park. We're all very traumatized by that. And until we find real solutions and these things don't continue to happen, we're going to continue to see these laws. Whether there's a patchwork policy that's happening in different jurisdictions or the state does, a statewide policy, I don't know if Coloradans will ever feel safe.
Patty?
Well, it would have helped this session if a legislator hadn't left his gun in the bathroom. I think it might have stopped this bill from going through. I've been to town meetings out on the plains where counselors are wearing guns at their belts, and the conversation continues very civilly. It's not a surprise that some would opt out because of the belief that there should be freedom. But this is not an issue that's going to go away, and I hope I hope it doesn't take another tragedy to make it go away. There were other bills that were passed that were really worthwhile this session, and a lot of them protect the diversity that really makes Colorado colorful. So we've got some good bills coming forward and laws that will really improve Colorado if people follow them.
Okay. Our right to freedom of speech and freedom of expression once again in the news in Colorado, with different groups speaking out about the Israel-Hamas war. The Democratic Party's Central Committee was divided this week when it voted down a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. And then that vote came after a social media post by the Center on Colfax that reacted to the pro-Palestinian protesters at the Denver Pride Fest a couple of weekends ago. Alton, that original post was taken down. A new one was put up that was apologetic and worded very carefully.
Yeah, it was worded very carefully because the first one, from a communication standpoint, was entirely too long. In trying to cover all their bases, they missed the big base of making sure to also condemn Islamophobia and anti-Arab sentiment. So, of course, now we're talking Democrats, LGBTQ community, Israel, Hamas, so this can be a one-way ticket on the cancellation express here. So I'm going to think more in terms of keeping it on the communications part. There was a bit of tone deafness, but I am going to give a shout out to the center that even though they took down the actual post, they still have it available on the website. And I also commend them for still being an entity that has a comment section, because that's always been, we also talk about First Amendment things and what happened. And since I spent my whole career in government, we had very narrow guardrails about what kind of posts we could remove. We're not the arbiters of what someone gets to chime in on, et cetera. So watching the political part of this, and again, proud American, but I'm always going to have concerns about our 246-year-old country continuing to wade into this issue that goes back to pre-biblical times.
Alvina.
I guess I'm not surprised. When you're working within community and folks are already traumatized, and then they get that kind of reaction in their own safe space that they've created for themselves, that gives that reaction of protection, very short-sighted, not long. So I'm not surprised that they made one statement and then took down another. When it comes to the war, I think that we'll continue to be divided on it. I think voters are really concerned about who's paying for their groceries, how much they're getting paid per hour, their health benefits. I think that's really what voters are focused on. So I guess we'll see what party leaders continue to say about the war, but at this time, voters really care about, pocketbook issues.
Mm-hmm. I was surprised to hear about that vote among the Democrats on Monday. I just thought the timing was interesting.
Well, the timing was really bad. When you think about the concerns the Democrats have here at home in D.C., Gaza's a little far away for them at this moment, especially when you see that Epps and Hernandez had both gone down in the primary. I'm not sure their position on Palestine was the only reason they were voted out. I don't think it's the fact that Kent Thiry put in $1.2 million to defeat them and a few others was it. I think it was their general behavior. And people, as Alvina said, people are concerned about what's going on in their lives right here at home. And I think they want legislators who pay attention to what's going on right here at home. As for the Pride statement, it was the 50-year anniversary. Think about how far this country has come in 50 years. When I talked about diversity for people, LGBTQ people, what an amazing thing it was to celebrate. So it was upsetting that their parade was stalled, that their speeches were stalled, and that then they had this backlash on top of it because their statement wasn't perhaps as artful as it should have been.
Krista.
I hope people don't just read the articles saying that this resolution was only about a ceasefire. The resolution's really thoughtful. I know it failed 40 to 55, but it condemns the murder of Israelis. It condemns the taking of hostages, many of whom have not been returned. It condemns the loss of civilian lives, some 30,000 people, the loss of infrastructure, the fact that people are at risk of starvation. It talks about settler violence, which is very real, but both in across Palestine, settler families attacking Palestinians. It is an ugly, painful situation, but the resolution was really fair, I thought, in highlighting this great tragedy. It also calls out anti-Semitism, but also anti-Muslim and anti-Arab sentiment. I thought it was a good resolution, so I hope that people get beyond the articles and just say, oh, this is just another ceasefire resolution. No, this is something that is important to look at. I praise the Democrats for taking it up. You'd never see something like that in the Republican Party. Whether these resolutions are efficacious in any way, I think that can be debated. Is it the same as putting a free Tibet sticker on the back of your car that doesn't actually do anything? But I want to commend the Democrats for at least discussing this painful, tragic situation and trying to do something about it.
Okay, all right. Since most of us are in holiday mode, let's talk about the pursuit of happiness. The state is very happy because tourism is one of the top drivers when it comes to Colorado's economy. But in some areas of Colorado, they're kind of cringing at the thought of all the visitors this weekend and this whole week. Alvina, I'll start with you.
Well, what's interesting is folks are trying to get out of Denver, right? Everybody says everything in Colorado is focused on Denver, and they're trying to get out to rural parts of the state. Outdoor recreation is one of the major drivers in our state. I think, obviously, making communities safe, which is kind of, I guess, what I've been talking about this whole episode. I encourage folks to go out, be safe, be kind to your neighbor. That's the Colorado value, and and those that are welcoming visitors. It's part of our economy. You just kind of have to take the good with the bad.
In Vail, they're very concerned about the amount of teenagers that have been flooding into that town on 4th of July. And they're threatening, if we see your kids doing something, we're processing them. And that seems extreme to put out that warning out there for parents to see and the kids to see.
Well, if they're breaking the law, maybe somebody should do something. You have all the fireworks laws, and nothing ever seems to happen with those. We also have to remember not just to worry. We don't need to worry about our neighbor necessarily when Mother Nature can do so much to us. Look at the deaths by drowning so far this year. Look at all the other hazards. So be careful out there and worry a little bit more about the elements maybe than the guy next to you might be toting an Uzi. I also want to say, good luck flying through Denver International Airport. They're expecting record crowds. It's still a construction mess. The only good news is that there actually are some new train cars. So with any luck, you won't be stuck for hours when one breaks down.
Mm-hmm. Krista.
I would love for people to be a little more conscientious. Like, I get it. I used to drive up to Wyoming to get my fireworks when I was a young person. But, come 10 o'clock, stop firing them off. People have to go to bed. Dogs have already been traumatized. Do what you need to do, even if it's slightly illegal. But stop at 10 o'clock. If you're going to be a pot smoker, don't go to a family-friendly venue where there's families and smoke pot. Hotbox it in your car, take edibles. Like, just be conscientious that there are other people around you trying to enjoy this state. That goes for teenagers and, sadly, for adults as well.
I do think the 4th of July is one where people do lose their mind. I don't know what it is, right? Day drinking, maybe? I don't know.
Could be.
Alton?
Yeah, that ranks up there as far as amateur nights, along with
New Year's
Eve.
Yeah.
So a couple things to that. You tagged out of the last show with your experience getting a chance to get up into nature, and I was able to get up this past weekend to the Lincoln Hills area up by Netherland and Wonderview. We have a beautiful state. We have a balance to make sure it's not being loved to death. And as far as the Vail thing, I'm all about that. I'm always talking about we don't have any consequences in place for anything. So the fact that Vail telegraphed that you're not turning this into a Miami Beach situation where we have to shut down the whole city because of your antics, I'm all about that. So I've always been a big believer that forewarned is forearmed. Go enjoy Vail. Don't do anything illegal. Don't do anything crazy. And also keep in mind that, Vail's geography, you can't really spread out real far. You got a highway here and you got a mountain here. So that sort of focuses everything into certain areas. And, I didn't even know that was a big teen destination, but I could see how it could easily be overrun if you have people coming in from all over the place. So again, love Colorado, but don't love it to death.
I guess Newport Beach in California has a similar thing on 4th of July where that's a teen hangout and the same thing, where the police are cracking down.
Weirdly affluent teen hangout, so let's remember that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
All right. Let's talk about some of the highs and lows of this week, or in keeping with the 4th of July holiday, let's talk about the sparklers and the thunderous thuds. Let's start with something that really irked you, that was a big thud this week, Patty.
Here's a big thud. The revelation that the Stay Inn, which was one of the first motels that was bought to become a shelter, it was during the Hancock administration, not during Johnston's, still hasn't opened. They're blaming zoning, they're blaming a problem with a construction crew, but that would seem, if we can put millions of dollars into buying these buildings, we should be able to get them open.
Central City is considering adding strip clubs. Good grief, they've already ruined it with gambling. Remember when Central City was like this cute place? It's got that great opera house, and now it's this little mini Vegas, and now they're going to add porn? Come on. That's a shame of the week.
It's up for consideration.
Yes.
Not a done deal yet.
I'm sorry, because I'm just thinking in terms of, you remember that was originally small stakes gambling. I wonder what small stakes strip clubs look like. just saying. All right, so my low is the Colorado Rockies bullpen. I love me some Colorado Rockies. I'm even quoted in Lou Cady's book about their first season. But their bullpen has just been brutal this year. I was able to get to a game this week where they wasted yet another stellar starting pitching performance. And as soon as you go to the bullpen, you have to start holding on for dear life. So my hope is that they're going to get that turned around and then also get some on-field product. We've had 30 years of great sunsets and a beautiful ballpark. It's time to see some baseball on the field.
And good fireworks shows
And
this weekend.
great fireworks shows, yes.
All right, Alvina.
I think I'll go back to the debate. I'd like to see Biden recover and the party just move on from there. I think we're having this conversation way too long.
Okay, all right. Patty, something good.
Speaking about way too long, it's been way too long, but the Blue Mesa Bridge is reopening at least part of the day. So that's a great move this week.
That is just in time, the nick of time.
Earlier, I mentioned that voters have a responsibility to elect ethical, not crazy people. Actually, the primary voters did a pretty good job. 14 of the 18 endorsed candidates by Dave Let's Go Brandon Williams got shot down, also Epson Hernandez. So kudos that just a few crazies still got in, but not as many as we're trying.
And I'm going to shout out longtime friendships. As a Denver Public Schools product, I still have friendships that endure to this day that have been formed for 40 and sometimes now closer to 50 years. And it just, to me, that's such a great part of being a Denverite, is when you run into people that you've known since elementary, junior high, high school, and you take right back up like no time's elapsed.
Love that. Alvina.
I am hitting the classic Colorado amusement parks. I'll be visiting Lakeside and Waterworld this week.
Lakeside, good, and Waterworld, get them both in. All right. My high is that my daughter, who has an internship back east this summer, first summer, not at home, wanted to come home at the last minute to celebrate the 4th of July with us and her Colorado friends. There is nothing better than having the whole family and all the friends together. Thanks to our insiders for coming in this holiday week. We appreciate your insight. There's definitely a lot to talk about. And thanks for you for watching along or listening to our podcasts on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. I'm Kyle Dyer, and I will see you next week right here on PBS 12.
PBS 12 believes in the power of original, local programming. Help us bring more shows, like the one you just watched, by donating at pbs12.org/program support today.